Mark Skaar on the Skaar Kaard on 103.7 The Fox. Proud to bring in Brian Wheat from Tesla. Brian, hello, welcome.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, my friend?
I'm good.
Awesome. All right, well, you have a book, Son of a Milkman, My Crazy Life with Tesla. Congratulations. It's a big deal to put a book out.
Yeah, it is. I think you get one chance when you've been in a band for as long as I have, that you have an opportunity maybe to put a book out. So I took the opportunity and put it out.
Again, congratulations. And the first thing I want to talk to you is not book-related, not Tesla-related. I want your thoughts on McCartney 3.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really great.
I think it's the best thing he's done in years.
So everybody...
I'd say it's the best thing he's done since Flaming Pie.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really fantastic, and I hope our listeners have checked it out, and if not, please do. It's endorsed by Brian Wheat, after all. In the book, you had a chance meeting with Paul when you were in London a long time ago. Tell our listeners about that.
Well, I was there in 87, when we first put out Mechanical Resonance, and I was there. We were going to play the Marquee Club 2 nights in a row, the famous Marquee Club. Mm-hmm. And we were doing press, and there was like five little shows we were doing in all of Europe on that first album. And so me and Frank were over at Geffen Records in Soho doing interviews. And when we finished, Frank said, let's go over here to this guitar shop and look at some guitars. I said, okay. So we were walking through this park, which is called Soho Square, and I just kind of looked up and I saw this building that said MPL on it, which was Paul McCartney's office building, which I'd seen in magazines or whatever when I was a young kid. And I went, oh, shit, there's Paul McCartney's office, Frank. And just about that time, I looked up on the third floor window, and there he was looking out, gazing over the park. And I waved to him, and he waved back, and I motioned, hey, come down, and he kind of gave me a sign, like, in a little while, And I went, cool, Frank, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to meet Paul McCartney. And he said, oh, okay, great. I'm going to look at guitars. And Frank took off to look at guitars, and eventually Paul came down, and I got to speak with him for about 5 minutes and took a couple of pictures with him, and it was great. I got to meet my hero. Yeah. I tell people on the 8th day, God created Paul McCartney.
That's awesome. We're with Brian Wheat talking about Son of a Milkman, My Crazy Life with Tesla. And the foreword is by Joe Elliott, who's a dear friend of yours.
Yeah. Me and Joe have been friends since 1987. And I asked him if he'd be so kind as to write a few nice words for the foreword of the book, and he was very happy to do so.
They were so very instrumental in getting you going. I know that.
Yeah, there's a brotherhood between Def Leppard and Tesla. There's a lot of similarities, and we spent a lot of time with them. And, we were on a lot of that Hysteria tour, and they kind of took us under their wings and tried to, mentor us a little bit and help us down a path. And I remember sending Joe the demos for Great Radio Controversy, to see what he thought, what songs he liked, which ones he didn't. And it was great. He's a great guy. I love him to death.
In the prologue, it really touched me, Brian, right away when you're talking about being with the famous photographer Ross Halfin, who's a good friend of yours, and Chris Cornell, and you're out scouting photo shoot areas, and you strike up a conversation, and something that strikes a chord with me and likely a lot of our listeners is just a happenstance conversation about anxiety and depression.
Yeah, we were just driving around, and he kind of brought it up that, he was having these anxiety attacks. And I shared with him, look, I've been having them since I was 14. And, this is what I do, and, this is what I try. And, anxiety and depression's a motherfucker. And, he's, and that's what we talked about. And that's the only time I ever met him. The only time I ever talked with him was that time. And it wasn't too much longer after that, maybe 6 months, that he killed himself. So that one kind of hit me. I tell people in the book that I never really could understand, when Anthony Bourdain or Chris Cornell killed himself. I had a hard time understanding how someone could get in such a bad place with depression that they would kill themselves. And then last year I got into a really bad funk myself. And I didn't contemplate killing myself, but at that point, it was such a dark place, I understood how someone could contemplate doing it. And it was pretty eye-opening for me.
We're talking with Brian Wheat about My Crazy Life with Tesla. Yeah, this pandemic has done a number on me. And these things, for people that don't understand, they come out of nowhere. There's no rhyme or reason. There's probably underlying triggers, but these things, you get into fight or flight mode. Do you feel that to be the case?
Absolutely. You do.
Yeah.
See, that's what happens. You get into this fight or flight mode, and it's scary as all hell.
Yeah. For sure.
It's anyone who doesn't know what it's like can't imagine it until they actually experience it themselves. There's such a stigma to it. I mean, people think if you say, if you're suffering from depression or anxiety, they kind of view you as mentally weak. But that's not the case at all. It's just this thing that you can't control that just happens. And, you learn to control it through therapy and stuff. I did. I learned how to, at least have some way of combating it. And, but when it comes on and it's intense, you're in for a ride. And it can be a very scary ride indeed.
I also wanted to talk to you about weight and image. I know when Tesla first came out in the mid-'80s, of course, the hair metal, the glam things going on, and it's always been a thing in the industry where those things have kind of gone in tandem. You got to be thin, you got to be good-looking, and of course, when you combine that with things like anxiety and depression, it's a weird cocktail, and it's unfair.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure, which feeds the anxiety and depression. It kind of turns into this cat chasing its tail syndrome, if you will.
Yep.
Where you have all this pressure to look good and stay thin, and then that creates anxiety, and then it kind of starts fueling itself, and you get this spiral thing that is very hard to deal with, but I managed to do it, and it's not easy and it's not fun, that's for sure.
And then you had the whole bulimia thing going on too.
Well, yeah, at a certain point, you get so freaked out about gaining weight that you start being bulimic. You say, well, if I ate, 6 pieces of chicken, it turned into this thing, and that lasted for, I want to say, 4 or 5 years. All through, 88 to 93, when the band broke up, 94, that whole period of time, it was, this thing that, was this way of me trying to deal with that. And that, that has effect on your body and everything as well. So, I put my poor body through a lot of weird shit.
Before I go into other topics, I just want to thank you for writing the book, because I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Well, I had someone ask me, did it bother you being so honest in your book? And I said, no. Because if it does help some people, then it's worth it. I don't care. I mean, if people want to judge me or whatever, let them judge me. I can handle that. As long as, maybe some people are getting some help from seeing that I can be open about it. Because I think talking about things like bulimia and depression and anxiety are the first steps to trying to get well from these things. And if someone says, well, look, Brian's in this famous band and, he can talk about it, then maybe I can. Then I'm happy to put my story out there for people to see.
Talking to Brian Wheat, My Crazy Life with Tesla, Son of a Milkman. You weave into your book your friendship with Jimmy Page. How did your friendship, or where did you first meet him? And take me back there. I'm sure it was one of those pinch me moments, like meeting Sir Paul McCartney.
Well, it's funny because I met Paul McCartney, but he doesn't know who I am.
Sure.
Me and Jimmy are really good friends. We speak on the phone. We see each other. Exchange Christmas gifts. We're buddies. How I met Jimmy was through my friend Ross Halfin, who's like one of Jimmy's best friends. And I met him in 1994 when I was in England. I think 94, yeah. Mixing, busting out. And Ross said, "Hey, you want to go out to this David Lee Ross show at the Hammersmith Odeon tonight?" And I went, "Yeah, I'll go," because I was there mixing. And he said, "Well, Jimmy's going to come out tonight. Be cool. Don't be an idiot." And I went, "Okay." And that was, a great piece of advice. Not that I would have been. It's not my style to go, "Oh, hey, dude, Jimmy." Because obviously, next to Paul McCartney, Jimmy Page is one of my next heroes. So I met him, and I asked him if he wanted a Coke or something or whatever, and I went and got him a drink at the bar there. And when I came back, he said to me, "I really like the 5-man acoustic jam." And I went, "Excuse me?" He goes, "Yeah, the 5-man acoustic jam. I really like it." And I went, "I didn't even think you knew who I was, man." He went, "Yeah, you're in Tesla. We're label mates. I'm on Geffen." He was on Geffen at the time, and he said, "The cool thing about it, Brian, is you're the first band to ever put out a live all-acoustic album." And at that point, it's like you couldn't get a better compliment from anyone, right?
All right.
So we became friends and have seen each other over the years. And, the last probably, I want to say 15 years, we've really, seen each other quite a bit. And I cherish my friendship with Jimmy. He's a really, really nice man. He's a very, very much a gentleman. He's a true gentleman, and he's obviously a legend. But to me, he's just my pal Jimmy. And just so happens that he happens to be Jimmy Page
from Led Zeppelin, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking with Brian Wheat, and sadly, one of my all-time favorite bands is UFO. We lost both Pete Way and Paul Chapman this year, and Paul Raymond last year. Yeah.
And we lost 3 of them. Yeah, tough year. Me and Pete were really good friends. He was one of my heroes, and I became friends with Pete Way as well through Ross Halfin. Because Ross and Pete were, they grew up together. And me and Pete became friends throughout the years and always kept in touch. And I was really sad to see him go. And I was friends with Paul Raymond and Paul Chapman both. but most friendly with Pete Way. I've always Pete stayed at my house, and I stayed at his house, and we were Thunderbird buddies. We both played Gibson Thunderbirds, and Pete was the coolest looking bass player I ever seen in my life.
So many people ripped him off. Yeah,
Yeah, I did. He was he's who I tried to emulate my whole career. Was the reason I played Thunderbirds and at Hoffner's for Paul McCartney, and Thunderbirds because of Pete Way. And the first time I seen Pete Way, I think was on the Lights Out tour, and I was just like, I don't know who that dude is, but he's the coolest looking rock star besides Jimmy Page I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ross Halfin. Ross just put for our benefit of our listeners, just put out a photo book of Pete Way too. Yeah,
I'm in it. I actually share some of my stories of Pete in the book as well.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So hopefully when that comes out, I'll get my copy. But I saw Pete last year, and we had a great lunch together when I was in London. I was at Ross's house. I spent a lot of time with Ross. Ross is one of my best friends, and Pete came up from Bournemouth. We went out and had a nice lunch together. So the last time I saw him, I had a great time with him. I loved Pete Way.
A lot of people know about Tesla. Probably some of our listeners will know about Soul Motor. And speaking of former UFO members, your original guitar player was Atomic Tommy M. I'm sure he had stories for days.
Yeah, no, Tommy, actually, it's funny because now me and him and Darren are working back together again. Awesome. So, yeah, we've there were a couple albums me and Darren did with Soul Motor that Tom was off doing, something else, but recently in the last, 6 months, we've been getting together, and I saw Tommy, 2 weeks ago in Sacramento. Me, him, and Darren were together working on some new Soul Motor material, so that's great.
Well, let me know. We'll play it when it comes out.
Yeah, he's a great guitar player, Tommy is.
Talking with Brian Wheat, I wanted to talk to you about band management and how you got interested in it, because you had a couple managers over the years, and now you're doing it.
Yeah, the thing is when Tesla broke up in 95, when we put the band back together in 2000, I thought, well, I'll call up Peter and Cliff, our managers, Q-Prime, that managed us, throughout the first part of our career, thinking they would want to manage us again. But, they really didn't. I think they had enough of us, the first 10 years. And although they've always been really supportive, they just weren't into managing us. So we had a couple other guys manage us. And I was always found myself the guy in the band saying to the guys that were managers, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that, because I learned so much from Peter and Cliff. That in 2006, when Tom Zutat was managing us at the time, and we had a bit of a disagreement, and we parted ways. I just said, look, and Frank said to the band, look, Brian's been doing this all these years. Just let him look after it. And I spent the next 10 years managing the band from 2006 to 2017. And now we have this guy, Mike Kobayashi, who manages Def Leppard and Tesla, both. So I just kind of naturally fell into it. I always tell people, when me and Frank started the band, he was the music and I was the business. I was the guy always out making contacts and trying to get us booked, and he was this guy that, was this amazing musician. And that's just kind of carried on through the years naturally.
And you have J Street Entertainment, and I know you're working with new bands now.
Yeah, I have some young bands that I work with that I'm developing, and I got a kid in England. I got a band from Ireland I've been working with. I got a kid from Saginaw, Michigan that I'm working with. So I'm staying pretty busy in terms of trying to find young talent and, trying to bring them up and groom them and maybe help them not make some of the mistakes we had to make when we were young and hard-headed. Trying to say, look, there's an easier way of going about this. So, and again, it's a natural progression. I mean, I'm a songwriter, I'm a musician, I'm a producer, I'm a manager. It just naturally leads to, trying to farm some new talent.
Mm-hmm. I know Frank's doing the same thing.
Yeah, Frank is as well. He's got a couple of great young bands that he's working with, and we both share that passion.
Talking with Brian Wheat, Son of a Milkman, My Crazy Life with Tesla. And obviously 2021, barring getting the vaccine out there, or I should say getting the vaccine out there, is going to be great news. And hopefully we can get some sense of normalcy and see Tesla back on the road.
I hope so. I hope that soon we can get back out there and play, because we've been just sitting around really not being able to do anything. I mean, we're all kind of scattered all over the place, so we haven't been able to get together and really work on any new music. And then, we're older, and some of us have kids and elderly mothers and fathers and stuff, and so we don't really want to get together and, get COVID and spread it to one another. So we've been pretty much just kind of isolated up on our own.
I told Brian before we started rolling, we're in the neighborhood in the backyard of the Surf Ballroom where you've played multiple times.
Yeah, well, we got to get back there. You say we haven't been there since 2007?
2013.
2013. Okay, well, that's been too long. Got to get back up there and play. I love playing that place. It's always a great gig. Crowd's always great there.
Yeah, and the thing I've always loved about Tesla is that I dislike the blue collar, meat and potatoes, blues based hard rock. Always respected that. So thank you for all the years of music. You got a lot to be proud of, Brian.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Brian Wheat, Son of a Milkman, My Crazy Life with Tesla. Brian, thank you so much for being on with us. We really appreciate it.
Okay, buddy. I'll see you soon.
For Brian Wheat, I'm Mark Skaar. This is the Skaar Kaard on 103.7 The Fox.